right, my name's Dan Hill. I'm here interviewing John and Rita for the Northwest Multihull Association. It's February 15th, 2015, in a wonderful home on Harstein Island, which is just outside of Port Townsend, Washington, on the Olympic Peninsula.
Marrowstone Island.
Marrowstone Island, sorry. So close, so many islands. So many islands. So thanks for taking time with me. We had a little issue with our first recording, so we're going to try here again, and we got a little sunset going, so we might adjust the camera a little bit as we go. But why don't you introduce yourselves and how you got into sailing?
Rita, go ahead.
Okay. I started at 5 years old into boating. My parents bought me a ticket at a church raffle, and I won a 5-horsepower outboard motor, which I claimed and used and kept it. And when I finally got old enough to actually use it myself, got a National One design. I was living on the East Coast and used that to power that first sailboat in Long Island Sound. And that, because I was living there, had an opportunity one day to meet Arthur Piver, who came out to Connecticut to speak to some community boat people about this fantastic new idea of building a multi-hull in your backyard and having this super safe, easy to build boat that took 2 weekends, not really 2 weekends, but he made it sound like 2 weekends in your backyard and you could sail around the world. He was a wonderful speech maker and inspiring. But at that point in time, there were no multi-hulls to be bought, and you had to build one. And he suggested that there were some people on the West Coast in the Seattle area who were building an organization of people to build boats. And for other complicated reasons, we left Connecticut, moved out here to Seattle area, and found the couple of people who were starting to have a club to think about building multi-hulls.
What year was that when that all happened, when you moved out to Seattle?
About 1966.
1966.
And I think I must have met Arthur Piver 64, 65.
Yeah.
The people that were interested in forming a club, I don't know if the club was quite yet designed yet.
Not quite. The first meeting I remember, which I think was the second or third meeting of these few people, because they were just getting to know each other, was in a home. And people just sat around and talked and brainstormed, and it was warm and friendly. And so we decided to have a monthly meeting, and by the second or third month, the group had gotten too big. And in not a very long time, we were renting the space that you all are now using for the meetings.
Was it in South Lake Union, though, right, back then, or was it near where they're at now?
No, it's just, we met in that same building where you are now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Puget Sound Club.
Yeah, Puget Sound Club.
Excellent. And then, John, what's your background here?
I had a lot of outboard experience in Florida, but my real first sailing experience came at Valley Community College when I was 21 in 1966. And my first exposure to Multihulls was in Santa Barbara, walking down on the boats on the waterfront, and I spotted what turned out to be a Piver lodestone. And I was told that a gentleman had built that in his backyard, and I launched it, and it was quite successful at it, and looked very nice. I thought, maybe I could build one of those someday. And at that time, that was 1969. And later on, I got in touch with Ed Horseman. I saw his ads in the Sail magazine, and decided to write him and see what was going on in the multi-hull world from his perspective, and also Northern Cross, and also the Piver family. But by the time I got all those catalogs, I kind of settled on a Horseman, a TriStar 35, which I did not even start building before I found a pair of 42 cross office for sale on the neighborhood drive built by Vernon Carroll and Gustafson. And I bought those and hauled them back over to Seattle to the Sugaree shed on 2903 Commodore Way, West Commodore Way. And my golly, we got going on the boat there, and I just switched to Norcross as my designer, and I drew up a bunch of swoopy mower profile, cabin design, and Norm liked that. And helped me out with the rest of the stuff and the rest of the design. And by golly, we got to work on a main hull.
Great. And then Rita, you did some boat building too back then. What was your, tell me how that started and what that project was like?
I was an artist and a sculptor, so I had a lot of skills that easily transferred over to boat building because I used tools and I was pretty strong. So I got, I started on and helped on a lot of different boats, but the one I spent the most time on was a Nottingham design 40-footer that was called Quishquash when it was sailing. And a lot of time because we used old style building skills for that one, because in that era, the plans came with numbers and you had to loft. Mm-hmm. So you had your table of offsets and you had to learn lofting skills. I loved boat building. It was a good exercise. I kept meeting lots of people who wanted a helping hand from time to time. So I worked on a lot of different boats over time. You know, some that people know, the Invictus, which I think is still out there, and construct that one. Wither, which is sunk, I helped construct that one. I don't know, half a dozen other boats that I enjoyed helping people work on. And then eventually met John, and he was working on this boat going, and we got together. And because we got together, we're now here in this beautiful place, this house that John built. And we've had a gorgeous life and raised a son and have a little grandbaby.
We have and Helen Oliver for some of our first date was going to their launching at Kenmore, the launching of Sanderling, which I think was a 40-foot aluminum worm-style catamaran. And that was my first date with Rita, was to go to that launching. And Bob and Helen are still friends after all these years. Sanderling has sailed off to the sunset with a different owner, but we still are in touch with Bob and Helen. So that was really great. My experience had been a lot of carpentry, building houses in the Boise area, and I came over to Seattle through Boeing, and they hired me to come and help build the first interior mock-up of a 747 in 1966. And that was a real plus there. Was starting to work with curved hulls, and of course the whole thing of interior design there. So that was a real plus. I had a lot of skills already, except for fiberglassing. I had not done much of, but boy, I sure got my hands full when I went to work on doing a 44-foot trimaran.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during the boat build processes that you guys went through?
Well, size, for one thing, it was big. bigger than I had imagined. And I have some pictures that I think I got copies of that showed how large the main hull was. I had the Alma sitting there, and I had Norm's satellite there, where they had Norm's plans that came with the Almas. And my big job was to try and translate that into a foam glass sandwich main hull, and then meld that with the plywood, laminated plywood almost, and it worked out very well. I found the right kind of foam. I read a couple of good books on the subject, and there were others in the area there that were just getting started too. So foam sandwich building was just coming into vogue about the time I got going on Sugaree, and I was very, very fortunate to have been able to plug into that.
Good timing.
Yeah. When I think back on it in those very early years, I think the biggest challenge people had was, there was this phenomenon, yes, build it in your own backyard, and people were all locked into that concept. But finding the backyard where the neighbors wouldn't come out and threaten to shoot you, which happened at least once that I know of, finding the backyard big enough to build a large multi-hull was a big challenge. So there was a lot of difficulty people had in finding a spot to build. In the greater Seattle area, the time that I was most active was also the time that Boeing was having financial difficulties. A lot of people who were laid off work. And it turned out to be fortuitous for them because they were laid off work. They had a lot of time. Many of them could collect some unemployment. Some of them were on food stamps. They could go to the Boeing surplus and get all kinds of materials and supplies fairly inexpensively. So they had this opportunity for all these people to become friends and to have time to become friends. So I do remember them helping each other all the time, looking for a space to build and a safe space, a big enough space. And then later on at the end, it would be, how do we get it out of this space?
Right. So what was the involvement with the club back then for the builds? I know that some group material buys and some things like that.
Yeah, John was a super important guy in that era, which is now ducking almost quite a few years, 7 or 8 years from when I first came to Seattle and when John came. So he volunteered. He got one of those good spaces to build. He mentioned it, and he had a place to keep things. And by that point, the club was organized enough that we could buy in bulk, and we started to use that reality to go around to different stores in different places and say, look, if instead of one paintbrush, we buy 20 of them from you, instead of one roll of rope, we buy 30, will you give us a discount? So they more and more agreed to give discounts, and then we would buy in bulk, like bulk barrels of glue and big rolls of fiberglass and the supplies we needed. And John had space where he could keep them for the other members to come and buy some from the bulk stock.
West Commodore Way was an industrial area, basically. I had a welding shop next door. Very good idea. My shed was built up against the side of the High Liquor boat factory. By the way, if you ever saw those wild Rainier beer bottles with legs sticking out the bottom, that's where those were built.
Oh, wow.
So it was really a really fun thing when John Nelson, who was the manager there, came out with the 2 or 3 of those guys with his employees inside, walking around, taking pictures and everything. Hey, John, look at this. Oh, my God. Rainier beer commercial right next door. So, it was really a good deal to have the boat shed out there, and I was able to do the bulk stock and also the newsletter at the time, and it worked out quite well for the club to have that centrally located situation.
And the club had a trailer back then. So did you use that to launch your boat?
Yeah, we found a trailer for sale from Blue Water Boats. I think they made the Ingrid monohull design, and they decided they wanted a better trailer, so they sold us our trailer pretty cheaply, 3 axles, and oh my goodness, it easily would carry 20,000 pounds, and so we beefed it up in some places. We made had my welding shop next door did the welding that needed to be done, and for supports underneath the wings of the boat. And we made it so you could actually back the boat, the trailer, into the water with the boat on it, and that would float off, and then you just drive forward right on out of the water, and there you go. You just launched the boat. Well, my goodness, the first one we launched, that was Bob Dean's Brown 40, and that was what an exciting day. And then just a few weeks later, we launched my boat, Sugaree, at in Ballard at the boat ramp, and it was very, very successful. And the trailer just did a great job. I don't know really how many boats we launched with it, big and little.
Yeah.
And mast, we got a nine mast package together for the field down in California, and the trailer came in very heavy for hauling those masts to from my boat shed where they collected out down to whoever's house order it. So we had a lot of buying power in those days, and we figured out ways to use it. And boy, we just saved, the club members saved thousands and thousands of dollars through both mine like that.
And again, it was because John could store that trailer. We had a place to do it, and people took care of it because every time if you put it in fresh water, not such a big deal. Put it in salt water, you had to pull it out and get all the salt out, clean it out. But my recollection is, I don't remember which year, but it had to be the mid-'70s. We launched 20 boats in 1 year, big and small, and half of them went major cruising. Fiji, Australia, Africa, around the world, circumnavigated. So the people who were building those boats were actually also very serious sailors. Some of them, maybe not all. Some people stayed local. But it was an amazing bunch of people, for sure. And again, in an era where if you wanted a multi-hull, unless you wanted a little outrigger that was in, somewhere in French Polynesia that the natives built, if you wanted a multi-hull, you had to buy plans and build it yourself.
Yeah. So you built on Commodore Way and then launched in Ballard. So you trucked that across the Ballard Bridge. What time of day was that?
It helped to be building cultivate friends of the Seattle Police Department. There was a sergeant who came by my boat shed. He was a boater also. And he came by my boat shed and checked in once in a while to see how it was going. And he and I became good friends. And when the time came to get the boat out and launch it, he asked, well, what time of day you want to do this? What day? And I said, well, it's time of a Sunday morning at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Do it.
So it wasn't Monday at rush hour.
No. And he said, do it, my golly. We pulled that thing down there and went across the Ballard Bridge, taking up 3 of the 4 lanes. I remember Bill and Kathy were in there with Corvair going down in front of my port home, making sure nobody tried to go between the hulls. And one guy went by real slow, and I could see, his hand come out, and he goes down the side of the port armor with his hand on the boat, going by, yay, and we went on across the bridge and got down there and got all lined up, and then the party started, and by golly, before it was over with, we had about 200 people down there at that boat ramp watching us get the thing in the water. And John Marbles was up on the Trident Marine Fisheries classroom ship, taking pictures of the whole thing. So we really had a good time that day. And July 10th, 1979.
I know that you had transitioned the original plans from plywood to foam and did a little bit of geometry changes with some help from the designer. I think it'd be interesting to talk about your main traveler track that you had on that boat.
Well, back in the early 70s or the mid 70s, actually, Eric Temperley got quite famous with his Fenwick aluminum trimaran. And as I remember seeing a picture of it in the Sail magazine, and by golly, it had a semicircular traveler and on it, and so he could really control his mainsail that way. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. I'll see if I can come up with something like that. And by golly, I did. There was one of the companies down over in Ballard was able to bend my track when I got the right length and to the right arc. And we got that track over there, and we bolted it down with 5/16 stainless bolts and a square aluminum extrusion under each one to varying lengths to accommodate the curve of the deck. And it worked out wonderfully. We put a turning block at each end, and those went to the boom, and I was able to control the boom at any quadrant sail. We never did a preventer or anything like that, and we were able to get the tension, proper tension on the boom downhaul also, and it just worked out wonderfully.
Such an interesting design. What other features did you guys add into the boat, other before launch or remodels or things like that you had done to make, let's think about creature comforts?
I'll tell you one thing, I didn't. And that's put a really good anchor winch on it. we pulled anchors and all the way to Glacier Bay and back in 1983. And let me tell you, we got awful tired of pulling a chain and anchor. And about that time, I'm thinking, why didn't I put an anchor winch on this thing? An electric one. Bill Christensen solved that problem himself. When he built the sister ship, Sugaree, Chinook, why he put a profit winch up there and it works great. But that's one thing I wish I had done. The other things I wish I had maybe done was make a spray shield that went in the open wing nets. We ended up putting carpet in there, and to keep spray from coming up into the cockpit when the weather got rough. And that worked quite well. But if I had more experience with it, we would have done that right from the very start. But it worked well. The nets in there were good for putting in you had to dig in one side, the canoe on the other, and a nice place to drop the fenders when you needed to get rid of them quickly. And that worked good. The sail stowage was in the omelets, large omelets. We had plenty of room in there. And what else? We had fine storage in there in the omelets also. We had a cabin forward. Our master cabin was up there. We had a single berth on each side over the wing berths, and there was a double berth in the aft cabin. And that arrangement worked out quite well. As you went down the gangway into the cabin, on the right side you had your galley. On the left side we had a large chart table, and the circuit breakers all on the bulkhead there, and spout for the radio, and it just worked out great. We had a Dickinson oil fired heater in the forward of the main cabin that kept the boat nice and warm. And believe me, when we got to Juneau and got to Alaska, it got cold at night, even though it was May or June or July. And August, we were plenty toasty because of the foam glass sandwich insulation, and we did not have double pane windows. I would put double pane windows here next time, because you always had to deal with condensation on those.
Yeah.
But it worked out fine anyway. It wasn't a big problem, and we were always warm and toasty on the boat generally.
All right, I'm gonna shift gears and talk a little bit about life on the water. And I know, Rita, you have quite a bit of monohull experience too. You've done some good voyages on monohulls as well as multihulls, and maybe you can give us a little bit of background on that and what you feel like the differences are, the advantages of monohulls over multihulls and multihulls over monohulls.
Well, the short story is monohulls have a big lead weight in the middle, and that scares you when the water's coming on board.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that multihulls can flip over, but to my mind, they still give you a raft to hope for help on. Yes, probably my biggest monohull, small monohull adventures on Lake Ontario when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Just my first lessons in sailing were on Lake Ontario. I hitchhiked one year to the Panama Canal, and when I got to the Panama Canal and wanted to turn around and head north again, I shopped around for some of the boats in the canal, and there was a not very good condition multihull that was looking for crew, a trimaran, and there was a top of the line, British ship shape 50-foot monohull with all the, fine art on the walls. I mean, it was a gorgeous boat with a professional captain, and he was delivering it, and they really needed one more hand to go through the canal, because you need to have hands on the ropes when you're going through the Panama Canal. So I decided in that case that I'd take the ship-shaped monohull over the trimaran that just didn't seem safe to me. It wasn't in very good condition, and the people were a little blah. So we set out in December, and it was not supposed to be hurricane season, but boy, we got out there and we got hit by a hurricane off of Cuba, and really bad conditions. Huge rogue waves hit us, washed 2 people overboard. It was frightening. we got the two people back on. The captain gave me the wheel while he was trying to figure out what to do. We lost everything electronic. The boat was very fast filling with water, and we all knew we had a lot of lead under our feet. So it was very scary. We got as many people as quickly as we could to start, a water bucket line to start bailing the boat. We succeeded. Both of the people who fell overboard, we got them back. They were tethered. I mean, we were smart people. Everybody on board, professional captain, everybody was properly tethered when outside on deck. So we got everybody going. We got enough water out, but every single thing that was electric was gone. Our Loran was gone. We had no communication capacity. Nobody knew where we were. We had to go back to sextants and sons and measurements because we didn't have other equipment. But we got back to Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do remember at one point in time thinking, dear God, this is really, really awful. If I ever get back on shore, I promise, I will never go near the water again. I will stay away from boats. I won't take baths. I won't even brush my teeth. Just please get me home. But I lied. Don't tell God, but I lied.
Tell me about that trip that you took from California up to Washington on a trimaran, and what year was that?
Oh, I don't remember the year. Larry Christensen had been trying to sail the Transpac, and then stuff happened, and he needed to bring it back north again. He had a couple of crews bail out on him, and so he came back up begging. And so I and a couple other people went down and tried to help him, and eventually we got it back. But that was a rough ride, beating north. And Larry was really funny. He was always seasick. So when we got on board, I said, "Where's the food?" He said, "Oh, I don't need any. I just throw it up anyway." So we had very little food on board.
Did you say, "I meant this food for me"?
We eventually got him and us and the boat all back, but it was an interesting adventure. We had a life raft too. That was another really hilarious Larry Christensen thing. Can we put the life raft in an easier position so that, if we need it, we can pop it off and jump in? He said, "No, I've got it locked into the helmet. It's safe down there. It's not mine, I don't want to lose.
I don't want to lose it. That's funny.
But we got back. We all got back. We stayed friends to the very end.
Yeah, the wonderful experience being able to sail down the coast with Bob and Mary Bragans and a gentleman named Gary Harold in 1977. And we had a very successful trip. No bad weather. The Puffin was there across 38, I believe. Houston is Horseman from TriStar 38. And we went and we fished tuna on the way, and by golly, we caught a couple of really nice tunas. And Mary really knew how to cook tuna. And so we made it on down, and they let me off in Santa Barbara. And I did not see that Piver at the dock. I assumed the guy had done sailing somewhere. But nevertheless, they let me off in Santa Barbara, and I hitchhiked back up to Seattle through Idaho, visited the folks, and also got a lot of chance to sail with Al Coben quite a bit on his TriStar 35XR. What a beautiful boat that was. A lot of people never saw it before it was sold and went south. But nevertheless, he did an incredible job on that boat, down to the stringers and everything. 3 coats of white paint on it inside and everywhere. And all sanded between coats. It was absolutely a stunning boat. And I have heard back that boat is in San Diego in a marina, and it still looks as good as the day Al launched it. that's been taken care of really well. It's had good on it. But nevertheless, Al got me out on there many times, and we did the Smith Island race, and with Mark Evans and Tim. I can't think of Tim's last name, but anyway, I was really thankful to get the experience while I was building on these other boats. And Bill Davis too. We took Durham Cross out on Bill Davis's Cross 46, and was a lot of wonderful experiences with those guys. So I really appreciated all the nice rides and experience I got with those great people.
Tell me about some of the adventures that you had together on Sugaree.
Well, the first biggest one was, of course, not the biggest, but the first big one was around Vashon Bay. There was no Multihull start for that race at that time. I think when was that? That was about 1982.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
and they put us at the back to start last. They thought that was the best place for us.
We were last start, and by the time we finished the race, we were first.
They still do that.
They put us back because they changed it. They were putting the Multihulls first, so they didn't have to, have the problem of being passed.
Now it's the monohull dodge, yeah.
And we're coming in about a mile or two, heading north, and by golly, here is Meridian. Meridian at the time was a 60-foot ultralight displacement race boat, and they're working along, and here we come. We're on the port side, and we come by, and we're gaining on them, and we kept gaining, and we kept gaining on them, and the next thing you know, we're passing them, and we still had our little, at the time, little son Stuart was still using diapers, and we had diapers hanging in the rain to dry. And as we went by, one of the guys on Meridian blew the horn, and the next thing you know, they're doing the bow. And we went by, and Bill Buchan, who had been a customer of mine one rainy night, came by, or was at the helm on that. And later on, when actually before that, when we launched Sugaree, I had a very nice present from Bill Buchan, and that was a 1-inch thick cutout of the spinnaker pole compartment on the billet, on the stern of Glory. And he had cut that out and made me a wonderful bosun's chair. And Al Coben did the rope work on it, and I still have it right here. And our son, when he comes, he doesn't swing back and forth. We just throw the rope right over the top of the log here, and then the room can swing back and forth. And that bosun's chair. What a great experience that was. And that was that trip. And later, the next year, we got everything ready and did our trip to Alaska. And we went all the way up into Glacier Bay, by Ketchikan and Juneau. And my sister was living in Juneau at the time. And we got to take her around Douglas Island one day, and went on up into Glacier Bay with some friends with us. And we had a biologist and a good photographer. And by golly, we just had a great time going into Glacier Bay. It's like going back thousands of years in time. So you can see the climax flora down to the start of the lake, and then you go there. And a whale came to visit us, a humpback spotted us over in a cove, just kind of sneaking along. And by golly, this humpback came over and bit her to death.
And circled us and go. And
Yeah, came right up. I mean, you could basically almost reach out and touch her. And you could hear her talking through the hull. And I'll bet you they could have bought the stock in Kodak. Film in those days.
I think everybody on board used up all the film they had.
Camera
Yeah.
going off while we visited with this whale and got up there and sailed among the icebergs and stuff. It was just the premier journey to get up there and do that and to see all that wonderful country on the way up and back.
Did you guys experience any high winds or bad sea states when you were out cruising?
Coming back, we were in October. We got into October on the way back, and by golly, it got pretty rough in Johnstone Strait, getting across over to Kelsey Bay, and by golly, it was rough, and that's where we really got on the idea we need some carpet or something in these open wings here because the spray is coming back into the cockpit, and you had to dodge it. That was about as rough as it ever really got. We had 2 days of that, and they had broke into came down south of Campbell River, north of Nanaimo, and the night, about 1 o'clock in the morning, by golly, the wind turned and it came from the north, and we were kind of tired of getting beat up. We went out and headed south in the full moon, and we had 21 knots coming down on our way to Friday Harbor to check in with customs. And I said, my goodness, this is some boat.
21 knots. Did you bring any specific storm options like drogues or a sea anchor? Or another question that I had is, did the boat hove to at all very well?
Didn't really need any. We did not take Sugaree out in the open ocean for any of our journeys yet. They did, of course, when they took. It was sold to Trilogy Excursions, and they friends sailed the boat to Hawaii. They got in a little rough weather, but nothing major. We never really needed any drugs or any of that sort of thing. But I suppose if we had really gotten into cruising in the Pacific, I'm sure I really always liked John Casanova's idea of a parachute anchor. That worked pretty darn good for them. And I'm sure it would have worked well for us too. When you get too bad, put out the parachute anchor, go below, and just take it easy. And wait till it blows over, up the anchor, and put on your business.
So we're gonna shift over a little bit to the reflections and advice part here, where what do you feel like are the most common mistakes people make when building a multi-hull?
Well, I think John said that they picked too big a boat to build. I think that's one of the things. So you really need to think about how you're going to use it, why you're building the one you're building, and the right size is extremely important. And then what materials you want. I mean, some people really are very happy with wood, but as I think you said about, although sometimes wood and water don't mix, there is such a thing as rot, and I know that will always be a problem on the water. So choices to make about size and types of plans, types of materials. And
What else did you say about
But
choosing
Jim,
sites?
Jim Brown wrote in his book that he thought the ideal cruising boat should be between 36 and 40 feet. The reason for that was the distance between swell.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to be interesting, the way they interact with boats. And it seemed to him, and I probably would agree, that is a good size for an ocean going boat. You get bigger than that, you really need more crew. And so, consequently, you need more space for sleeping, you need more stock in the galley, you need a lot more weight carrying capacity. Now, Sugaree did not come up short at all with that. Sugaree would have made a fine South Pacific cruiser had it ever been needed. But once it got to Hawaii, it became more of a coastal, cruiser type thing, and never really got into the conditions that, like, say, Casanova's did down in the Southern Ocean, which is really, really rough. But nevertheless, the I think the ideal boat would be maybe around, for me, around 40 feet. And if I was ever to do it again, or was blessed with being a young man again, I'd probably go for something around 40 feet to be a good cruiser and maybe a little easier to handle.
It does matter where you think you're going to sail, because if you're going to stay in Puget Sound, you can have a very different style boat than if you're going to go try to round the, Cape of Good Hope or down around the Horn. If you're going to be doing the really rough stuff, you need a different style, different construction. Do you want to open cockpit, closed cockpit? There's a lot of decisions that you need to make before you ever start building.
Where are you going to build it? That's the question.
And then where? That's a big thing. Where?
That's a big one too, right?
Yeah. Big backyard.
What's your perspective on the modern multi-hull designs? Have they improved? Have they lost something?
Well, I don't know. I think they're fantastic. But the huge difference being, you can buy one now.
True.
And, you don't have to build it. And so some of those modern boats are built assuming professional construction and styles and techniques. And, there's a lot to be said for getting out your wallet instead of your aching back and arms. But I loved boat building, and, I would do it again. I remember being young once. It was fun. I love it. I'd do it again. So I just would be a boat builder. I like the idea of having your hands do the work.
If I did it again, I'd probably twist Ian Ferrier's arm and then have him come up with a 40-footer and built like he builds it, starboard half, port half, and glued together in the middle and glass together there. That seems like a really nice way to build a boat. And having studied some of those things while I was looking for Sugaree too, we actually went to Canada and visited a fellow up there who was selling off a project like that. And but it wasn't 40; it was a 30. And I finally decided, of course, that was too small of a boat for what we needed. But as it turned out, we didn't get it. We ended up with the Sugaree 2 with the unknown catamaran, 35 feet.
Yeah. But then again, if I were starting indeed today at age 80, I wouldn't start to build a boat. I'd go buy one.
Sure.
I'd be really grateful that they have them for sale.
Nowadays we cruise with home to America.
Yeah, home to America. Have you toured any of the modern trimarans, the Neil trimarans? Have you seen these? The big cruising tri?
I think we've been aboard a Neil.
No, we have not. There's not many left. It always stopped.
Yeah.
And when we bought Hawkeye, which was across 39, why we went to Mexico, and there is where was it at Cabo San Lucas?
Yeah.
My goodness, there's a whole bay full of old trimarans,
Yeah.
and some of them are pretty sad shape.
Yeah.
Some are kept up, but the majority of them, I think, are in pretty sad shape because of the weather down there and the hurricane.
Absentee owners too, and the absentee owners they park them down there and go live somewhere else.
A lot of absentee owners.
Yeah.
We've seen a beautiful Cross 46 that Eric Morris rebuilt down in Des Moines and or Federal Way, and by golly, we found that boat, and there it was, kind of sitting up in the mangroves, half underwater, and nobody around. Everything is still there. Nobody around. We've asked about it, and the fellow said, "Well, a man and a woman owned that boat, and they brought it down here, and couldn't take care of it, so they gave it to their kids, and their kids never came to get it.
Never came down.
And it's ruined.
Yeah.
And it's kind of terrible. Stuff like that happens down there.
That is a good point. A lot of people don't realize how much time and maintenance a boat requires after it's built.
True. What do you miss most about the boat building or sailing?
Well, I said it earlier, camaraderie. I really miss
Yes, the camaraderie.
people.
All the people in the club and that we had at that time were also supportive of each other. And every meeting, well, which in those days was a Friday night, was packed. I mean, we had 60 people plus in that room. And boy, the stories we got and the kidding that went on. There was some really good stuff. Right, would never live down. Long he was taking the business, but when Monty Kimball and his wife Mary came, it was always a treat to hear these folks. I swear they were as old as we are, and he still was working on putting a wing mast on a boat he had bought from Joe Quindet. A Horseman 40, I think it was. And by golly, we went over there and saw that one day. And just amazing. This little fella was still going at it. I'm so proud of knowing people like that, and the mowing people, the engineers, and the guy out sweeping up the trash. They're all were into it, and it was such a pleasure to have those people come over to the shed and help out when we returned to home. My goodness, 25 people showed up, and we turned the hull of Sugaree, and that was a real treat. Nell Langley and Thelma and Bill and Joan Davis and Chick Wren and all these other people coming over there. And we're out there, by golly, we got her turned over and nobody got hurt. We were all right.
And we miss them. Most all of them have passed.
Yeah.
They're like another family,
Yeah.
You got Uncle Mel, Aunt Thelma, and all these, it was really something. When our son was born, Stuart, uh, about Dana Hoffman's boat, that big. Yeah, these folks built that boat up in Anchorage and sailed down to Seattle, Tacoma, and by golly, when Stuart was born, they brought over a nice little parka for him. It was great. And Stuart got it.
The club bought us a little life jacket for him. He started sailing real early. Yeah.
Stuff like that happened all the time.
So if you could take one big last journey here in the Puget Sound, where would you go? Or Inside Passage, or
We would be. I'd like to explore more of the South. We didn't get out there enough, and I certainly would go to the Barkley Sound, and in the Hawaii. That's still I've never been there, and there's so many.
I have, but he hasn't.
Rita has, yeah, and I'm sure it's changed quite a bit
Oh,
since you
sure.
were there.
Yeah.
But all the way on up, you go by these inlets on the way on the Inside Passage, and you wonder, I wonder what's up there. Princess Louise Inlet, never been there. And a lot of these great places that you can go and spend 2 or 3 days just hanging out there.
you could spend probably 20 lifetimes up there and never see all the coastline. Yeah.
Sure, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the one piece of wisdom you could pass on to the next generation of sailors or boat builders?
Well, the one I would like to say is the education. John explained how he sailed with other people. In the early days of the club, when we all had to build them because it wasn't a choice, we also had a lot of people with other important skills. We had classes in navigation. Because you didn't have GPS back then, we had to learn sextant navigation. We had classes in medical skills, because once you left the dock and you headed out, once you were outside of land, there was nobody there but you, and there was no way to be in contact with anybody but you. So we had important medical classes where we had a nurse, for a Vietnam nurse, who came, she and her husband had a boat, and she taught amazingly detailed medical procedures, gave us handouts and information to give us the confidence that if we got into a major medical emergency in the middle of the ocean, we would be able to manage it and keep someone stable to be able to get eventually to assistance. So we had lots of education, lots of practice opportunities. We shared the experiences. We had the newsletter. So those many people that are already out sailing were sending letters back that had information, so you could read that information. We had those experiences that could be shared. So information, education. I started at age 5, and I'm still learning. Still have a lot I'm sure I could learn if I went out today.
Absolutely. How about you, John? One piece of something from maybe a boat builder perspective. What would you pass on?
Make a lot of friends. And share what you know. Share your experiences. This is the thing that people stay out of trouble. If you learn something from someone else, but pay attention, because he might have been there and done that. And if you might end up in that same situation someday. But sharing your experiences and the camaraderie that goes on, and the communication is wonderful, and really a great way to do it. And I'd recommend anybody who want to do that, pay attention to what your neighbor is doing there, and get involved in your club. I was commodore for 2 years, and because there was nobody in line behind me at the time, they were all busy building boats and or out sailing. And it really was a great experience, though, to be able to support that group as much as I did. And they'll never forget it. Was one of the highlights of my life, and it led me to my wife.
Nice. That's beautiful. Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to pause the recording now and thank you. Okay, this is part 6 of John and Rita. There was one aspect that I missed that we caught earlier in a previous recording regarding Sugaree's unique rudder, which was pretty innovative at the time. So I'm going to ask John a little bit about that.
In 1976, there was the Toronto Multihull Symposium, sponsored by Multihulls magazine, and several people from the club went up there to Toronto to participate. I did not go, but they came back with some great ideas. And one of the ideas was a rudder design. A fellow from Canada, Bernie Rodriguez. Bernie had designed several 30, 25, 30 foot boats, and he had worked out a design for a rudder that really appealed to me. It was a combination of some NACA foils, and they graduated in size from the top to the bottom. It was narrower at the bottom than it was at the top, and up against the hull. And the balance point of the rudder was a little different. It was more like toward the center of the rudder than forward. And so it wasn't a barn door rudder at all. And it was such an improvement.
It was tapered both ways.
It was tapered both ways, yes. Front to rear, and also side to side it was tapered.
And each one was a NACA.
Of course, you can do that with a NACA 2015 or something like that. But Bernie had tweaked. And one of my partners in boat building over there, Commodore Wade Jabez's house, was really enthralled with Bernie's presentation. And he came back and started building a 30-footer over there. But I also got access to that rudder design, and I scaled it up to Sugaree's proportions, and with Norm Roosevelt. It worked out wonderfully, and it was such an improvement over his original design that I believe he offered it in future years before he passed away. But nevertheless, the performance of that rudder became entirely clear to us on the first sail. We took our first sail in over on just north side of Mercer Island, and we sailed up toward Kenmore, and we literally sailed circles around our boat, which was a Nottingham 40. And Floyd Moore was our sailmaster on that because he had so much experience. And by golly, he said, "Man, this is the nicest rudder I ever felt in my life, because you just flick the wheel a little bit and it moved right there, and it was balanced well. You didn't have to fight it or anything." And all the way through the time that we had Sugaree, that rudder always got comments from whoever was at the wheel. And when it finally did get to Hawaii, one of the skippers of Trilogy excursions, accidentally backed the boat into the bulkhead and the rocky bulkhead and Lahaina Marina. And the next thing you know, I get a phone call from Jim Coon saying, John, do you have the templates for that runner? Yes, I do. Would you like that? Yeah, because I just fired a skipper to destroy it. and we need to build a new one just like it. So I sent Jim the Formica templates that I had used for that runner. And my welding shop next door to Sugaree and welded up the frame for it. And then I used that high density glue foam to fair it out nicely with a hot wire. We cut it with a hot wire, and then we glassed it heavily with the unidirectional and a couple of layers of bidirectional on it, and then a nice fine scrim on top of it, and really got it nice and fair. And
So that the second rudder that they built for it, did it perform as well? Was it a unicorn device, or was it repeatable?
To plan it.
And it worked. It worked again. So it's repeatable.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are, the space guys and their special designs and shapes. I mean, it's important. The shape is important, and then that double
Yeah.
taper
when we laid the
and
boat,
balance.
too, when we attached the alma, we did a little tweaking on the alma placement. As far as towing in and towing out, like you do on a catamaran.
Mm-hmm.
Those hulls are not absolutely parallel. And I was thinking, and with Norm looking over my shoulder, let's tweak that just a little bit. Well, we did. And by golly, the proof was in the pudding. When we were sailing north to Alaska, we left our customs check-in and headed north up the Strait of Georgia, and everybody was kind of tired because we'd had an early start that day, and I was still up and bright, and by golly, we put the spinnaker up, and I just can't get over the feeling I have. I'm up there by myself in the cockpit, watching that beautiful rainbow spinnaker that came to me courtesy of Fred Brussing, and watching that spinnaker up there, taking my hand down and tightening the steering shaft just a touch, and sit back and watch that thing as that boat sailed north like it was on train rail.
All by itself.
It was
Amazing. Okay.
feeling that. Boy, we must have done something right here.
Did a couple things right.
Couple things.
I think we did a couple things right. Okay. All right. We're good. And pause.